Welcome back to another episode of the Girls Talk Money podcast. This is a bit of a different type of episode for us. We're spilling not only all of our life updates, but we also have an exciting podcast update for you all that we could not be more excited to share. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you might remember that we used to have a weekly recap section at the beginning of every single episode, but Grace and I are such yappers that we had to get rid of the weekly recaps in an effort to keep our episodes shorter than like an hour and a half. The episodes were honestly just getting way too long, and we want to spend more time in each episode giving more tangible tips and value. So we nixed the recaps, and today's episode is one gigantic update to compensate for that. But like I said, before we get into the life updates, we have a super exciting announcement. Grace, kick us off.
Wait, I'm so excited. Like, as you're doing the intro, I'm literally sitting here being like, can't wait to share this. Like, I'm getting so excited.
We've been wanting to share this for so long.
It's been a long time coming. We mentioned a while back that we were looking into hosting a group trip, and we have been working kind of behind the scenes for it feels like it's been a couple of months to truly make sure, like, we want this trip to give you like bang for your buck. Like, we want to make sure that it is to a great place, that it's packed with fun stuff, and that it really feels like a super exciting, fun experience. So we've been kind of picky about all the details, but now that we have it all together and the group trip sign up is live, we are excited to share that we're hosting a trip to Colombia.
I am so excited. Yeah, like Grace said, this has been like a couple of months worth of a process. We started kind of talking about the group trip and getting interest through a survey back in, I don't know, January or February. I feel like it was so early on in the podcast, and over 200 people filled out the survey. 200 of you, like people that were listening to the podcast, over 200 people filled that out, which was like so crazy. That absolutely blew our minds because obviously we're still a smaller podcast. We still have, we have an amazing community, but we still have a smaller community, and over 200 people expressed interest. So we kind of took all of that information. We took all of the information on destinations and price and duration of the trip. We took all of that, and we really wanted to curate a trip that made the most sense for everyone. So we were looking at a ton of different trip providers between Trova Trip and who we ultimately ended up going with, which was EF Ultimate Break. And I feel like EF Ultimate Break is a good one because so many people have taken trips with EF and they literally have the best reviews. Like, we couldn't be more excited about this trip because we feel so confident that it's going to run smoothly and they're going to put on an amazing trip for us. So we're so excited. Like Grace said, we're going to Colombia, which we were looking for a destination that was out of the country, but wasn't like a crazy across the world flight. A lot of people in the survey results said Bali, which like I would love to go to Bali too, but that's a 30-hour flight. And we were just we weren't super confident on like rallying 30 girls to go all the way to Bali at this point in our lives. We didn't know if we wanted to fly all the way to Bali for only a 7-day trip because it is such a long flight. So we were looking into a destination that was a little bit closer, not a super crazy flight, somewhere that had beaches and a good mix of activities and just different things that we can do with super nice weather. And we purposefully booked the trip in February when the weather sucks in most places. So we're so excited to kind of bring together like-minded women and be able to go on a trip for 7 days in a place that I personally wouldn't think to go explore on my own, which is such a big benefit of the place that we chose as well.
I feel like, I'm so excited. I love things like this. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be so fun to bring everyone together. I feel like group trips in general, I've always wanted to do one like this because I never did an EF Ultimate Break trip when I was in college, or even in high school. My high school used to do some through one of the clubs there. I never got to do one, but I've always wanted to because I feel like when you travel, like I've traveled solo a couple times, and it has its purpose, but it's just like a different experience. And when you travel with your friends, obviously you know them, so that's a different experience. But then getting to travel with a group of people that are like in a similar age group to you and have similar interests to you, and they're all people you don't know, like that is so fun. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
you get to be friends with everybody who's there and like just get to know everyone while also trying all sorts of new experiences and seeing new things with each other. And I just feel like also just like being with like a whole group of women, like it's literally going to be like a 7 day, 6 day girl party. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just feel like it's going to be one long like celebration.
Yeah, I've actually taken so many group trips in my life, but they were all when I was studying abroad in Europe in college. So I was like 19 years old at the time, and the tour companies would put you on a bus on like a Thursday night, and it would be an overnight bus to a different country, and then you would be there all weekend. They would put you up in the accommodation. They would plan activities, so you really didn't have to like think at all when you were there, which was the best part because when you're going to a foreign place, it like sounds all well and good to be like, okay, I'm gonna like go there and then explore, but then you aren't familiar with the area. You probably don't speak the language. There's a lot of like barriers to being able to see as much as you actually want to see. So when you go through a company that is going to have a tour guide that's going to pick you up in the morning and put you on a bus and be like, we're going here. You have no idea that this place exists, but we're going to go here. Like Grace and I were looking at the itinerary, and the one day we're going to be doing like this island day where like we're going to go to an island and like lay on hammocks and be at the beach, and like there's an included dinner, and like there's so many different like activities and things, so it's going to be such a fun mix of different things. And like you said, doing it with a big group of girls, that sounds so fun to me.
No, I love what you're saying too about having things planned out for you and not having to worry about it. I have said for a while, I would love to go on a vacation where I don't have to like think. Like I don't have to plan, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you go on
Yep.
like the trips with your friends, I love my friends dearly, right? But I feel like I end up usually being the one who has to like plan, like just because I'm a planner of a person, or when I've traveled with past partners and things, I have to be the one who's planning all the details. I just want to be in this energy of like, no think, right? No thoughts, no nothing up. You're like, I just and having a trip where everything's just planned out for you, I feel like allows you to do that. You don't have to worry about picking the best things or whatever. Like it's all kind of chosen for you. Obviously, though, like you do get to do your own things too. I feel like this trip is such a good mix of here's like the itinerary, but then also giving you time to kind of like go off on your own and kind of wander and check things out that you might want to see that's not on the itinerary. But having just like a general guide for it, I feel like is so nice because then you don't have to worry about planning it yourself. Because at some point, the like planning it yourself gets really annoying.
Oh my gosh, it becomes so stressful. And then your vacation is like a job at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm so excited. As for some of the logistics of the trip and kind of like breaking all of that down, so the exact trip dates are going to be February 22nd to the 28th. And we're going to put the entire link to like go check it out, check out the itinerary. You can book it like in this link that we're going to put in the show notes, but we're going to go over some high level details in this episode. So February 22nd to the 28th, obviously, of 2025. So we're still about like 8 or 9 months away from the trip, which we think is perfect timing to give people time to plan, and we can talk about payments and all of that stuff. The trip is going to cost $1,799. However, since this is a private trip, because that was a big thing for us, we said if we're putting together a trip, we want to make sure the only people on this trip are people in our community. So because we're doing a private trip, we get an exclusive discount. So you can use code GROUP200 for $200 off of your final price. But the price before the $200 off code is $1,799 or $1,599 with the code. That is for the 7-day trip without flights. So that's going to include things like your accommodation, having the guide, going through all of these like activities and excursions and things, and then some of your meals are included in that price as well. And then EF also has the option to book your flight through them as well. So when you go to book, you'll see like this is the price without the flight included, or you can select your airport and it'll bring the price up to like whatever the price is for your specific airport. So you can book your flight directly through EF as well. The benefits of booking your flight with EF is that you can lump your flight cost into the payment plan if you do it that way. And you will also get, if you book your flight through EF, you'll also get transportation from the airport in Colombia to the hotel, where if you book your flight on your own, then you'll have to arrange that transportation on your own. So that could be a benefit. But if you are booking your flight another way, or if you have points or anything else, you do have that option of booking your flight alone. Some other things to note, like I said, there is a payment plan option. EF has a couple of different like flexible ways to book. So when you do book, you can book your trip all upfront. You can also pay monthly up until the date of the trip, which is a perk of getting the trip like the earlier the better in that regard, because then there are more months to like be making the payments. So you can split the entire trip cost by month, or there's a third option, which is sort of like a pay as you go type of option. And that would require a $450 down payment. And then you can pay your trip in whatever increments you want to, but it has to be paid in full 3 months prior to the trip. So it would need to be paid in December. So you have a couple of different options in regard to how you're going to pay for the trip, because we want to make it as accessible as possible for everyone. And then the last thing to note in sort of like the logistics as well is that EF also offers trip protection, because obviously a trip in February of 2025 is pretty far away. So if you're worried about not really knowing like what you're going to be doing in February, or you're worried that something's going to come up and you're no longer going to be able to go on the trip, for I think it's like another $100 or something when you're booking, and you'll see this option when you go to book, you can add on travel protection. And this does two things. So the first thing that it does is, if you do book with us because you want to come on our trip and you think those dates will work for you, but then when it gets closer to, you realize that you can't go on that trip, but you want to do a different EF Ultimate Break trip, your travel protection allows you to switch trips, I believe up to like 3 times or something, for no cost. So that's really great. And then the second thing that it does is that it gives you travel insurance. So if something happens while we're over there and your health insurance doesn't cover international coverage, then that travel protection would kick in for that as well. So that's something to note too when you go to book and you see the travel protection, what that means and kind of what it does.
A couple of those like quick notes too is one, none of the payment plans have any interest. So if you choose that option, you're not like being penalized for choosing that option. And also, if you want to go on the trip, we do expect, just based on the level of interest we had from the initial survey and the people who have been asking about it ever since the survey came out, we do expect the trip to fill up. This isn't going to be a trip with like 100 women on it. So we do expect it to fill up. So if you are interested in going and maybe you can't pay for the whole thing up front, but the payment plan is absolutely doable, or if you want to hold your spot and, you know, pay the rest of the trip or whatever over the next couple of months, definitely do that, because we don't know how fast exactly the trip will fill up, but once it is full, it is full. So definitely keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, that is a great thing to note. Let us know in Spotify what questions you have about the trip. We're going to be posting it a lot on our socials as well, so you'll be able to see more details and things like that. But we wanted to make sure we put it out into the podcast first to give you guys who have been listening every Monday exclusive access to book and kind of like first dibs on the trip, because like Grace said, we have no idea how fast it's going to fill up, which is so fun. We're super excited about this, clearly. But should we get into the life update section now?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so like we said at the beginning of this episode, we have nixed we have nixed the weekly recap, which is honestly for the best, because Grace and I are yappers and we talk for literally so long in all of our episodes, and our episodes were just getting to be like so crazy long that we didn't feel like we had time for the weekly recaps. But at this point, we feel like we don't really get a good opportunity to update you guys on what's going on in our lives. And at the beginning of this podcasting journey, we were able to do that a lot better with the weekly recaps. So we wanted to talk about some life updates today. And I'm going to kick us off because I have kind of like a gigantic life update that I just decided on like literally this week.
And
And
literally in the past couple days, because Erin and I talked about this, like we talked about these topics a few days ago, and then I came on today, was getting ready to like start the podcast, and I'm looking at our set of notes, and I literally see that like the initial thing, like the initial timeline Erin and I had just spoken about a few days ago, has literally been like slashed in half. Like
I've shortened it drastically.
Guys, Erin, for reference, Erin is so very impulsive.
Yeah.
I'm not. Like I'm like more of a let me think it through person. Erin's very impulsive. This is like one reason we work well together, because when Erin's impulsive, like so impulsive. I'm like, let's slow it down for a second, honey. You know, okay,
Yeah.
let's take it slow.
And then
And
when
when
Grace
I'm
is
going
slowing
too
it down,
slow,
I'm like
Aaron's like, let's freaking go. Like, come on, hurry up. So it works, but it cracks me up every time Aaron and I talk about things because we've shared before that we are so similar. Like the things that we're just going through in our lives or like our thoughts or whatever. But the way with which we like handle them is so different
it's
because of
so
Aaron's
different.
impulsivity versus my like think it through kind of nature.
Yeah,
So
which
like, yeah.
you guys are going to see once we tell you what the updates
Yeah.
are. So, I have decided that I've been really annoying myself lately and how much I've been dragging my feet about the whole moving thing. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know, like I live in Pittsburgh. I love living in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has such a special place in my heart, but I have always said my entire life that I don't see myself staying in Pittsburgh. And my 25th birthday was last month, and I feel like it just kind of hit me like how quickly your 20s go. And my lease isn't up until March of 2025. And originally I was like, you know what? Like, okay, fine. I'm going to make it a point. Like, when my lease is up in March of 2025, I'm getting out of Pittsburgh. I'm going to force myself out. I'll be 26 by that point. But last week I was kind of just like, why am I waiting? Like, what am I waiting for? You know what I mean? Obviously, there's a lot that goes into like breaking your lease or finding someone to sublease. And I don't have all of the details like mapped out 100% yet, but it just kind of hit me last week. Like, if there's a problem, I'm just going to find a solution for it instead of being like, well, I guess I have to stay here until March of 2025. And I decided that I'm moving. And when Grace is talking about how impulsive I am, I literally had this idea last week. I spent all weekend looking at apartments on Zillow. And this weekend, like this upcoming weekend, so 4 days after I had this idea, I'm going down to Nashville in a couple of days to go tour said apartments. Ideally, I love one of the ones that I tour, and I come back and break my lease or find someone to sublease literally next week. Like, my timeline is that midsummer I'm living in Nashville. So definitely super quick, but I think like I'm just being called to go there. I've always loved Nashville. Every time I'm there, I've loved it. I have friends that live there. My entire management team is down there, and it's only an 8-hour drive from Pittsburgh, which I have to make this move with a golden retriever. So that's something to consider. I don't really see myself driving like 30 hours with my dog to go make a move at this point in my life. So it's just feeling right. And I have always been an impulsive person. And I think like my impulsivity always works out for me because it has like gotten me so far, I think, in like a shorter period of time, if that makes sense. So I'm really excited about it. And it's like going to come as a shock for so many people because I've been working really hard to build up this Pittsburgh community over the past couple of months, but it feels right for me and I'm excited.
I'm happy for you, girl. I'm excited for you. I think like it makes a lot of sense, especially given that like I mean, you just got out of a relationship in Pittsburgh, and a lot of your friends, almost all of your friends, have moved out of Pittsburgh. And of course, some of your family is there, but like this is something you've wanted to do for a while. And ultimately, there's nothing that's like holding you or keeping you in Pittsburgh at this point anymore. So it's like, why not? Like, you know, I just feel like with like the 1 year experiment thing I've been doing, I'm very much in like an F it kind of like just like a why not. And I feel like that's kind of the energy that you're having around this move of like, why not? Like, why not do it?
Yeah.
And I know you were saying the other day too that like a lot of the apartments in Nashville are offering 1 to 2 months rent free. So then it kind of evens out if you're having to break your lease. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been having that energy of like, fuck it, whatever. I was originally telling Grace that I wanted to go down to Nashville and then also go to Austin and tour apartments in both places. Like, the original plan was for me to, at the end of June, take a weekend, go to Nashville for a couple of days, then go to Austin for a few days. And then over the weekend, I was just like, you know what? Like, more options is just going to take me more time to figure out. And I am sort of in a place where like I know I like Nashville. I know I have friends there. I'm looking at the apartments. I know like one of the 4 apartments that I want to tour this weekend I'm going to fall in love with. So it's just kind of, and it is in the location like physically in the US that makes the most sense for me right now. The weather makes the most sense for me right now. So I'm just kind of like, why even take all of that time to go like tour another place? Because at the end of the day, like going to a city for 2 days is not going to give you like a good sense of whether or not you're going to like living there. You have to actually move to the place to know that information. So it's like, okay, I go to Nashville. And if I don't like it, this time next year I'll just move again. Like it's really just not like nothing is as permanent or as big of a decision as it might seem.
I feel like because we have such digital careers where nothing is really tying us as well to that physical location, it makes it a lot easier to kind of pack up and move because if we had like full-time jobs like in person, we obviously would be a different situation because moving becomes a lot more of a hassle if you have to find a new job every year. But given like what we do, it makes it a bit easier to pack up and move. So like yeah, if you go live somewhere, you don't have to stay there forever. We When Erin and I were just talking about this, we were sending like the longest voice notes ever back and forth the other day. And I was saying that I always felt like if I moved somewhere, it was going to be a place that I like put down roots. But then I was like, why? Like, why have that perspective and like put that pressure on yourself? And then I thought about it and I'm like, some of my good friends have literally, they're like 28, 29. They've lived in 4 or 5 different states in the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, good for you, like go do your thing. I also was saying to you too, and I was just saying this to my therapist today. I was like, if like when I think about it, I've asked myself, if I get to be 30 or 35 and I've never lived in another state, am I going to regret that? And I knew my answer 100% is yes. Like I would regret it. And for some people, they wouldn't, right? And for some people, they love exactly where they live and want to stay there forever. That's totally fine. But I feel like we're both in this headspace of like, it's time to just like go do the thing, and wherever we go is not permanent and we can move again if we don't love it, but choosing to stay in the same place that we know we don't want to be is not necessarily serving us anymore.
100%. I was having this conversation with my best friend last night because we're like the last two left in Pittsburgh out of our friend group. Like I have a couple of really good friends in Charlotte. My one best friend lives in Daytona, and then my one best friend just moved to Chicago a couple of weeks ago. So when I was telling her, I thought she was going to be like so sad and just like mad at me, but she was like, Erin, I'm so happy for you because you, out of everyone, I feel like you're the one that's being held back the most right now by choosing to stay. And she was like, I do think that once you get out of here, you're really going to be able to spread your wings. I think you get to a point where you realize that you've like capped how much you can grow in your same circumstances, if that makes sense. Like I've lived in Pittsburgh my entire life. Pittsburgh definitely gives like hometown vibes for me. And like, and this isn't just like related to social media too, but I think it's just like growing into the person that you like genuinely want to become. When people have these like preconceived notions of like who you are, and like I'm posting videos on the internet and I just get the feeling that like all of my hometown friends are watching me, and people that I've known since I was 10 years old are watching me, and they could still watch me when I leave. But I think it's just so different. Like it kind of allows you to step into like this next level version of yourself in a way that I don't think that I ever would be able to if I stay in Pittsburgh. So to a certain extent, I do think that I've been like holding myself back a little bit in trying to stay here like probably longer than I should have.
I feel like it's tough too. Well, so first, I relate to the whole like, well, I guess my life update is I also am trying to move, which I'll explain in a bit. But I feel like, and we were talking about this the other day, that like I grew up pretty close to where I live now. Like I'm not far. I'm still in Massachusetts. And I feel like there's like this expression of being able to only think as far as you can see. And when you're constantly looking at the same environment over and over and over again, sometimes I feel like, especially when you work in creative careers or in entrepreneurship where you're 100% in control of like your fate and your career, it sometimes is hard to think outside the box or really envision what you want your future to be when you're just surrounded by the same thing. And I feel like, especially in the area I grew up, there's not a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of business owners are here are small business owners that are, like construction companies and coffee shop owners and things like that. And I want to be in a place where I'm surrounded by more young people that are really hustling to make their dream life a reality. And I feel like that's just not what I'm being surrounded with at this moment. Like I have a great circle of friends that are doing that, but literally one of them is in person. Like
Yeah,
all of
they're all
my other
remote friends.
friends, yeah, they're all my friends are like, I have several friends that I've been friends with for over a year, some over 2 years. I've never met them in person but they're like some of my closest friends because they're entrepreneurs doing similar things to me. And I find that so inspiring to be surrounded by that. Um, but I also feel like it's tough as soon as you start renting, or at least this is how I feel. As soon as you start renting, it's tough because you get kind of boxed into that lease, and then your timelines are kind of stuck in that lease sometimes. Like I don't necessarily feel the desire to move in this exact minute. Like I have things I'm working on, which again I'll share more in my when I share my update fully, but I have like a little bit of unfinished business here that I feel like I need to close out. And I have some upcoming travel plans where I'm flying out of Boston. So like it wouldn't make sense for me to move right in this minute. But when I do go visit places I want to look at in the summer, like maybe I would like break my lease and go like in the early fall because the only thing really holding me here is that lease. And obviously, it's a privilege to have the money to be able to break a lease because that's not the reality for most people. But it's tough because I don't want to have to make life decisions, like big life decisions that directly impact my happiness based on a lease I signed for, you know what I mean? Because then my life
Yeah.
is always going to be tied to that timeline. Like my lease is up in mid-January. So then I move mid-January. And then when that lease is up, what do I do in that mid-January? You know what I mean? It just becomes
Yeah,
this
for you,
weird
and
thing.
we were talking about this on Sunday, but for you, like you and I are in definitely different situations when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
this because for context, I've been in this apartment complex in Pittsburgh, which I'm not in like the city center in Pittsburgh. I'm in the suburbs, which we can kind of talk about when we're talking about like the cost of moving and stuff. Like I am totally ready to prioritize location and spend more money on my rent to be in like a really nice location. And I would rather do that in a new city that I can explore rather than doing that in Pittsburgh and paying a premium for a city I've lived in kind of my entire life. But I've been in this apartment complex since March of 2023, so over a year now, whereas you just moved into that complex in January. So like
Mm-hmm.
it would be so much for you to like pick up and move right now and for you to say like early fall, but then your lease is up in January, like what's a couple more months? Whereas like
Yeah.
I'm ready right this second and that's still an entire year. So it does, and totally like a privilege to be sitting here being like, okay, well, if I have to break my lease, like I can do it. And that is a big cost. And like, yes, that's a big cost and kind of like a waste of money, I guess, but it's sort of like giving me a year back in my life. Like that's sort of how I look
Yeah.
at it. Like I'm going to spend a lot of money to potentially break my lease, and breaking my lease is the last case scenario. I would ideally like to find someone to sublease since I still do have close to a month or close to a year left in this lease. So I would ideally like to find someone to sublease, but worst case scenario, I have to pay 2 months rent to break my lease, and it just feels like the right timing. Whereas with you, like with everything you have going on with work, like it's not the right timing right this second. You don't even know
No.
where you want to move to. So like that's totally fine.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like if I had been in this apartment, like I know dang well, once I hit the 1 year mark of living in this apartment, I will be so fed up and ready to go because I already am feeling that way. The warm weather here in Massachusetts is my saving grace at this time. Like I've been able to work outside literally yesterday and today and a bunch last week, and I'm going to work outside tomorrow. It's going to be beautiful tomorrow, but if it was still like the chilly weather like it was in the winter, I would need to go, because that's really the big deterrent. But I guess to fill you in on my life update, it's so similar to Erin's, but basically, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, or if you have followed me on, especially my TikTok for a while, I made a video like a year ago talking about how I want to leave Massachusetts and I don't want to live here forever. But when I was getting to the point of signing this lease, there were still a lot of things going through my head. I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to move, and I felt like it was silly to pack up my life and go. The only place I really had in mind at the time was Los Angeles. I love LA, but it felt kind of silly to move completely across the country, only having been to LA one time and just kind of like taking a get, hoping that it would be what I wanted to do. And my dad was also retiring in the winter. And if you also follow me on social media, my parents are so special to me. And I just value my relationship with them and my time with them so much. And I just was like thinking through what was important to me over the next year, and being close to my family and being able to like spend time with them was ultimately just like it just felt like the right decision. And I don't know exactly like how to, it makes me like emotional to like say it, because I feel like I've talked about like my fear of losing my family before on social media, and a lot of people related, so maybe people will kind of relate on the podcast. But I just like wanted to soak up time with them as much as possible, and I felt like if I moved in January like completely out of state, I was just like giving up valuable time. Like, to be an entrepreneur, to not be working 40 hours a week and have complete freedom over when and how I work, and then to be so close to my parents and my dad who just retired, who now has like his entire schedule is open. Like, literally, I can go hang out with him whenever I want. And that's such a unique opportunity that so many people just don't get. Like, when it's summer and warm out, like I can like go take my dad kayaking for the day, or go to the beach and like bring my dad with me, and like on a weekday, you know? And that's just such a unique opportunity. So as much as I really wanted to leave and go out of state, there was something just telling me to stay here. So I moved in January to an apartment in the suburbs in Massachusetts, and I like my apartment. I do. I like the location, for a few reasons. I won't really explain why, because I don't want to give away where I live, but I like my apartment. And with that, though, I still feel the desire to move elsewhere. Like, that didn't go away. And before I moved, I wasn't sure if my desire to move was just because I wanted my own space, or if I truly just didn't like Massachusetts. I just wasn't sure. And now that I have my own space, it's that I just want something new. Like, I do just want to get out of Massachusetts. I don't hate it here. I hate the winters because I hate cold weather, but I would hate cold weather anywhere. I like Massachusetts. I think it's a great place to live. I could see myself owning property here at some point in my life while also having property somewhere else. But I'm just getting to this point where I feel like I have outgrown Massachusetts. I feel like I have taken everything from Massachusetts that I can get, and that it is simply just like time for me to go. I think moving into this apartment in January and realizing like, okay, I can live 100% on my own. I like living alone, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like being alone and like wish I had roommates. Like, I didn't know. I only had roommates once in college, and then I lived alone for 3 years. And I just wasn't sure how I was going to feel. But now I'm like, oh yeah, like I could move anywhere, and I'm confident that I would feel fine, and that I can make friends, and that I can like reestablish that place as home. So, very randomly, like 6 months ago, I started feeling very called to Florida, which like is so random for me, because I've gone several times when I was a kid because my grandfather used to live there, but I'm like pretty liberal. So like Florida's not, you know what I mean? So like it just is kind of seems like a random choice for me, but I don't know what it is. I've just been randomly getting all these random signs specifically about Tampa and St. Pete. So I decided that I'm just going to finally like pull the trigger, and I'm going to go down and check out those cities, I think in July, because I'm traveling in June. And then I'm going to see how I feel. I also kind of want to check out Charleston, South Carolina, and San Diego, but something about moving completely across the country, like something in my intuition and my gut is like, no. And I was literally just talking to my therapist about trusting my gut and taking action on my gut feelings sooner, because I kind of let them simmer for a little bit sometimes, which is good. It's good. It's literally in my human design chart that I need to think things through. Like, I'm not an impulsive person. In my human design chart, it literally says think things through, but sometimes I think them through a little bit too long, and I don't want to do that. And I've been having this feeling that moving completely across the country is not the right move for me. So I think I'm just going to trust that and maybe not even visit San Diego. Um, but I'm open to Charleston. I kind of want to check it out there. But I don't know, something about St. Pete and Tampa I just feel so called to. So my kind of plan is to check the places out in the summer when I come back from my trip in June, and then probably look at apartments while I'm there, and then maybe go back again in the fall if I don't like find an apartment on the first go that I would want to sign a lease in, and then move when my lease is up in mid-January. And honestly, I feel like when I thought about moving really far a couple months ago, like when before I moved into this apartment, I was like nervous about it, but now I feel just genuinely excited about the potential to move somewhere else. I just want a change of scenery. I just want something new. I want something different. And I also am so excited for the fact that my apartment here, I pay $2,400 a month for. It's a 2 bedroom in the suburbs in Massachusetts. If I move literally, like, I was looking at apartments in Tampa, and I don't want to be like downtown, but like I could get 2 bedrooms for like 2,500 or 26, and in nice, super nice areas. That would get you maybe a studio in Boston or like a grungy, crusty 1 bedroom. So I'm just excited about the potential to like kind of up level my life, be somewhere where people are out and about, they're outside all the time. Cause I don't know, Erin and I were talking about this the other day too. I'm also such a yapper. I need to shut up, but like, because I'm just like spilling all of my thoughts. But like,
We sent like
Erin,
hours of audio
like,
messages back and forth on Sunday, and that's
literally
why we're filming
hours.
this episode. Hours.
Yes, but it's like, and when I talked about this in my social media, people were like, "No, like I love the detail." So I'm just gonna keep being a yapper. But I was saying that like in Massachusetts, I feel like when it gets cold or when it's like gross weather, people just aren't outside. Even where I live, and when it's warm out, people are not just like outside, out and about, like, whatever. When I was in LA, I loved life there because every single day I would go to the beach and I'd watch the sunset. There would be tons of people at the skate park, like skating around and like being friends with each other and like walking their dogs and running on the beach and like rollerblading around and like doing yoga on the beach. And like people were just out and about. And I loved that sense of community. As we're here, like I just don't get that. And maybe if I lived in the city, it would be a little bit different. But even then, like I just want to be somewhere where there's a nice beach right there and people are out and about doing fun things. You know what I mean? I don't know. We were
Yes.
talking about this too, where I feel like when it's warmer out, people just like they're healthier. Like that's one thing about LA is there's so many healthy restaurants and places to eat, so much fresh food, allergen friendly food, which just it made my life. Like I was in all my glory when I was in LA, but also like people want to be active and I want to be surrounded by that energy and I just don't feel that here. And I thought about, okay, well maybe I just move into Boston. Then I was like, then what? I'm going to go spend even more money and feel like I'm not getting my money's worth because I don't love the city, Why not go somewhere even if I have to spend more on an apartment, go somewhere new. I don't care if I'm spending more on an apartment if it's a place that I feel like I'm getting my money's worth and I'm actually getting the value. Like my apartment, $2,400 a month, there's no amenities. There's not one. Not a singular. We have little stands outside that hold bags if your dog poops. That's the only quote unquote amenity that is here. There's no pool, there's no dog park, there's no gym, there's no common areas, there's nothing. So it's like the apartments I was looking at in Tampa and St. Pete, $2,600, 2 bedrooms, all the amenities in the world. Like you've literally everything. Great area, walkable to everything. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm ready for something new. And I'm finally pulling the trigger on it and being like, yep, we're packing up and we're going to get out of Massachusetts when our
Yeah,
lease
when
is
you
up.
said like moving across the country like made you nervous, but now it doesn't. There's like something wrong with me. I mean, in a good way, like to where that like doesn't a lot of things just like don't stress me out. Like the thought of literally going down to Nashville this weekend, probably breaking my lease or finding someone to sublease like next week. I'm selling everything. I said this in a TikTok video the other day. Like I will not be hiring movers to move furniture to like an 8-hour drive because that's going to cost
Yeah.
me $4,000 or $5,000 and I don't really have that much stuff. Like I have a bed, I have a couch, I have like
Yeah.
random desk furniture from college. Like I never bought nice stuff because I knew that this was going to like there was going to be a day when I was going to want to do this. So I'm getting rid of everything, which is going to be like a process obviously, but like it doesn't stress me out.
No.
Doing this like
Like,
in a month doesn't stress me out, which is
yeah.
like a good thing. But like you said, like just ready to be near people. Like I said, I live in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and I was at a friend's apartment the other day. This was like a couple weeks ago, and she lives in like the super trendy area in Pittsburgh, and a two bedroom there was $3,000 a month. And I was like, okay, so me thinking of like what I'm going to do next year when my lease is up, I'm like, okay, I'm not staying in in like the suburbs. My two options are move out of Pittsburgh or move into like the trendy area where there's a bunch of young people, and at least even though I'm still in Pittsburgh, I'm around people and can like go outside and do things and like not have to Uber 30 minutes when I want to go out. You know what I mean? I'm like over that. But in what world am I spending $3,000 a month
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I just like you, I would rather go spend that. I was looking at apartments in Nashville, the ones that I'm going to tour, and I'm going to prioritize location. I'm going to pay a premium to live in the nicer areas that I can walk to places, I can walk to restaurants, I can walk to go out, like things like that. I'm going to pay a premium for that, but I feel like it's worth it, and I'm going to get my value out of it because I'm going to want to explore the city because it's a new place. Whereas if I go down there and I want to save on my apartment cost and I live in the suburbs, or if I live in a location that I don't love, I'm not really going to get that experience that I'm looking for, and I'm ready for that experience. So paying a premium, I mean, this is definitely going to cost me a lot of money just in general, but like I'm ready to do that because I'm ready to prioritize, like you said, like up leveling my life for the next
Yeah.
couple of years.
I was talking to a friend about the potential to move to Florida, and basically come to find out in that conversation with him, he was like, I literally have been looking to move to Florida as well. And turns out we're actually looking at the same area, which is kind of cool if we both were to move there. Like having one of my really good friends there would be great. But he was saying, he's like, I don't even feel like Florida's that far. Like when you think about it, it's insane with Nashville. Like it's not that long of a flight, which feels good to me. Like I'm like, it's not that far away. Like if I needed to get home in an instant, I could hop on a flight and it wouldn't be that long until I'm home, versus being across the country just feels a bit further. And thinking about like, because I'm only a 2 or 3 hour flight from home, I would feel okay coming home for a weekend. But if I had to make a 6 hour flight, I probably would want to stay home for a little bit longer because that's such a haul of a flight if I was cross country. And also, when I was looking into moving to LA, I talked to a friend of mine that lives there, and she had lived in Massachusetts before. And she was like, the rent prices in Mass versus LA are very similar. Like they're actually not that different. But she was like, I feel like I get way more value for my rent price in LA given all that is there. And something about her wording it that way just made like something just clicked in my brain, because I was like, I'm paying, like, I think my apartment is worth 2,400. It's fine. They've already increased the rent since I moved in, like for new tenants, which is absolutely crazy. Like the new rent price. I'm like, guys, get it together. This, it's not worth that. But because I get to write one bedroom off, like my net rent is not that expensive. And to get a 2 bedroom in the city, I would never get it at this price. So, but then I think about it and I'm like, am I getting $2,400 a month of value from this place? I think it's what I needed at the moment when I moved, but it's definitely not somewhere I want to be forever. And I don't want to be here for more than a year, because I don't feel like I'm getting $2,400 a month of value in terms of the area I live in and what there is to do in this area and the people that are here and things like that. Like I've met great people, but it's not my forever place. But then I think about like living in a place where the value of like the cost of the rent matches the value that I'm getting out of it. And I don't know, I just loved phrasing it that way, because if you think about it too, it's like that's why people buy more expensive cars or they pay for like the nicer seats, because they feel like that gives them value on a day-to-day basis. Or you pay more to send your kid to a certain school, or you know what I mean? Like you pay more for things that you think are premium experiences and premium services. So like treating your rent the same way, where obviously it has to be within budget. Like don't go paying $5,000 a month for rent if you can't afford it, you know, but like at the same time, it's like same thing. If I go into Boston, I'm going to get a 2 bedroom is like $3,500, $3,600. If if I start paying $3,600 a month for rent, somebody come pick me up and take me to a mental institution because I'm not well. Like I that doesn't align with my values at all or my financial goals. So if I was doing that, I wouldn't. I would have to be not in the right mind to be doing
Yeah.
something like that, you know. So it's just like it doesn't make sense to do that. Like the amount I'm spending on rent, I just wouldn't be getting value from it. So it's like if I'm gonna pay it, I might as well pay it in a place where I feel like I'm getting value from it.
100%. I'm paying around 1900 right now for a 2 bedroom, but I did say when I move, I'm moving back down to a 1 bedroom, which I've went back and forth about this, but honestly, like my apartment is humongous and I really just don't feel like the amount of furniture I have like matches the space that's in here. My apartment feels so ginormous and it's so nice to have an office like to film the podcast, but that's literally all I use my office for. Most of the time I'm working from my laptop, like on my kitchen counter because I just like that better. So I use this for a podcast studio, which is so great, but I can film the podcast in my bedroom in a 1 bedroom apartment. Just because like looking at it, a 2 bedroom in like the super nice area would be close to $3,000 in Nashville as well. And I don't want to pay that right now, but I will pay $2,400 a month for a 1 bedroom as opposed to $1,900 for a 2 bedroom here because the apartment complexes are literally so nice, like super nice pools. There's like a rooftop dog park for Bella. There's like a podcast studio in the one apartment complex.
Oh,
So I'm super
that's
excited to go
fun.
look at all of these complexes with like really nice gyms and just like amazing amenities. And you can tell with the amenities that there's a lot of young people that live there. And that's the big thing. It's not just the amenities that you're getting, but you're getting access to meeting a bunch of new people. And I'm ready for a change. I'm ready to like go and like meet new people in a new area. So that's what I want. And if I go like get a one-off apartment somewhere in the suburbs, I'm not going to get that same experience. And it's like not the value is not there, like you said. So I don't
Yeah.
know. There's a lot of considerations. Obviously, moving is expensive and moving very frequently in your 20s is so expensive and can definitely throw off your budget a little bit. But at the same time, we're only in our 20s once, and I'm ready to like prioritize actually living and actually having like really fun experiences and making that work in my budget. So that does bring us to the end of this episode. We rambled for an extreme amount of time. We said we were going to keep this episode short, but we literally never keep our episodes short. But leave your thoughts in Spotify about all of this. If you've been thinking about moving, or if you have questions about the moving process or how we're planning on budgeting for it and all of that stuff, definitely leave that in Spotify. You could also follow us on Instagram at Girls Talk Money Pod and DM us if you have any questions there as well. But thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast, and until next week.